Welcome to everybody. Welcome to the GFA 2024. And I'm just sharing very briefly a little bit our program that started on the 1st of October. We're about midway through, so we've had the GFA going around the world. And today we're very, very, very excited to welcome you here online and on this continent. So for today's session, Chipkenboy Mangira has prepared a very dynamic program together with some colleagues. To first just give you all a very, very, very warm welcome to the GFA, and maybe just a small background to why we are gathering in this way. So in 2022, as part of a growing collective of fashion researchers, we began to feel that it was really important not only to allow different voices and different stories to be heard in thinking about global fashion and global fashioning, but the kind of conference structure that would allow certain voices to be heard and other voices to continue to be excluded. And so really thinking about how can we create more inclusive, a more inclusive format for fashion research that welcomes voices from, particularly from the global south, but also from diverse communities. And so this is the introduction to the Global Fashioning Assembly that was held 2 years ago in 2022, where we had 14 communities or 14 coalitions around the world sharing their fashion research. And from there, we really started to think about what it means to welcome these voices and to create inclusive spaces. And 2 years later, we're now able to share the work of 20 coalitions from around the world, and each of them hosting a set of conversations that are determined by the community and led by the community. So with a very warm welcome, acknowledging that we're coming together to listen and to learn and to grow with you in a community, in coming to know also your collective community. So Chipkenboy, thank you so much for inviting us to be welcome in your space and with your beautiful presentations that you'll share with us. Thank you so much, Chipkenboy.
Thank you, Erica, for the introduction. To the Kenyans here and the Sudanese, shukran for being here, and asante santa and karibuni. Asante sana kwa kuungana nasi siku ya leo. Welcome to GFA Kenya edition. And thank you so much for making time to be here out of your busy schedule. The session today is divided into 3 hours. So the first, we shall share a series of videos, and the next hour will be a conversation about their work. And in the last hour, the sharing council, we shall be in conversation. We invite everybody to come and share and network in the chat, because if this was an in-person event, we would be having tea or mandazi, chai and mandazi, and having a conversation and just getting to know each other better. So I welcome you to make use of the chat. If you want to collaborate with any of the speakers, if you have any ideas you'd like to share, or you have any resources that you'd like to share, please use the chat and continue the conversations then. So I'll start by giving a bit of background into my work at Own Your Culture, where I look at ancestral fashion and its importance today. So I'll just start by sharing my screen. I'll just share a video of some of the things I've been working on. So this is a video of Kamba beadwork. And in my research, I primarily study photographs of the past. I primarily study photographs and where possible, jewelry collections from museums. So I shall briefly touch on some of the beadwork that inspired me. Yes, so this video that you can see is a wall of Kamba jewelry from Eastern Kenya. And these pieces are from the 70s and 80s, but these designs are really hard to come by nowadays. Earlier this year, however, I came across a designer who was gifted one of these jewelry pieces by her grandmother who had made it herself. I have accumulated a lot of images of ancestral fashion over the past decade. In this series is a jewelry trend that I have been looking at. The coiled arm bands and leg bands found across the country in the past. I started this research a decade ago, and primarily to discover what my own fashion heritage is, what ways to express my fashion ways. So I do my photographic research primarily in libraries, museums, and art and anthropology institutions. This is one of the libraries at the National Museums of Kenya. Over here, I'm at the African Heritage House, which is a museum and a hotel where each room is decorated and fitted with art and fashion from all over Africa since the 1960s. For example, on the couch, you can see original mud cloth from West Africa. It's been important for me to find joyous photos. This is a photo of a woman from my hometown taken in the 70s. But most of all, my favorite form of resource is the people. This is Sarah Mon. She's a bead worker at the Maasai market. We were just having a conversation. I focus on beadwork, but today we shall look at textiles and kiondo bags. Today we will listen to the art of textile design, what textile design practices have evolved to, and the business of textiles. Just a bit of background on the leso and kanga fabric that you'll hear mentioned and also showing on the screen. Leso was originally designed by Swahili women as a symbol of emancipation from slavery. Leso cloth has now evolved to different unique colors and patterns. The distinguishing mark is the rectangular size of the cloth and the Swahili inscription. Leso was originally made through block printing. Leso is now mass-produced around East Africa. It was used as a communication tool from social issues to political. Now the inscriptions can be sort of likened to positive affirmations. This particular kanga that you see on the screen, or leso, was from a traveling exhibition currently going around Kenya called the Kanga Stories. This is a sample image of one of the earliest leso designs, and the inscription, as you can see down there, was in Arabic. This is a leso from the Obama era, when Obama was president. Leso nowadays features heavily during political seasons. So that inscription says that God has given us love and peace. This is my own leso that I took from my mother, who had been gifted at a wedding of one of my cousins. One of the users of leso fabric today is gifting during weddings. The inscription says there that we thank you, God, for everything. These are the parts of a leso. So the central part indicates where it was designed, but that has since changed. And now finally we go to the kiondo bags, which you'll see and also hear about. So a kiondo is a small woven basket made by Kikuyu, Kamba, and Taita communities. It used to be about 6.5 inches high, and the soft woven basket is made with braided string handle, black, orange, red, and natural bands of different colors. This is from the African Heritage House collection, collected between the 60s and the 80s. So we'll get to listen in and see how kiondos are made. I actually attended the kiondo making class. So those are one of the videos that you will listen to today. I'll start with sharing a video of mixed media artist Tibian Bahari. So just a bit more information about Tibian Bahari. So we're going to be delving into the expansive and deeply soulful artistic practice of Sudanese mixed media artist Tibian Bahari. From traditional textile printing, movement, and topography, painting and stitching, and more. In this video, Tibian shares her process and practice and how it all tells a story of Sudan. Her art is not art just for art's sake, but a story. This video goes deeper into her process, memory, and her homeland, Sudan. The war in Sudan has been going on for more than a year, which has left millions of Sudanese displaced and several dead. I invite you to listen in with care and consideration.
Hi, my name is Tibian Bahari. I'm an artist. I'm based currently in Nairobi, Kenya. I'm Sudanese and my studio is here in Kenya. My work revolves around mixed media, meaning I work with canvases, I work with recycled materials, wood, and fabrics as well. Textiles, for me, to be quite honest, it's the origin of it. You know, it's nothing that has been unfamiliar for me. I grew up big by the standards of the sizes of clothes, and God bless my mom at that time. She's the one that introduced me to the world of textiles, and it felt really great. Yes, I can't find my sizes, but then this is where it originated. Seeing the endurance and the persistence of textile, it's also some sort of resistance in it. You know, I'm big, but I'm still gonna go and get fabrics and then design it. And the practice for me of textile and embroidering or sewing is very much embodied on Sudan. You know, I speak very much about Sudan through fabrics and textile, and specifically this hand sewing. For me, it represents movement, and I'm sure you're aware of what's happening in Sudan, and there's war that's happening in Sudan, and because of the shape-shifting that's happening, and because of all the chaos and the movement and the lack of movement, I relate with this specific practice from a perspective of movement. You know, the idea of from the needle to the fabric, or from the needle to the textile, you know, just that is movement for me. And I think this, you know, textile and Sudan and this, you know, the sewing and needle, all together is a ritual, a practice, a performance in a sense, and to embody the movement that's happening. So it's a full representation of movement, body movement. I want to exhaust myself to a certain degree as well because of trying to relate to what's going on in Sudan. Of course, it depends. When I'm working with wood, that's when I'm the happiest, even in my process. Something about the texture of the wood or just the element of wood is very grounding. As opposed to a canvas, it's more of a meditative. Specifically, textile or working with textiles, because it is revolved around my practice of mapping and topographies. It's quite intricate, and it's also very personal because of Sudan. I'm not going to tell you it takes long or it takes short. I can tell you it exhausts me. It's very exhausting mentally, spiritually, being in the present, because trying to relate to some sort of an informal memory or a formal memory, and then the reality of the politics of the situation. And this for me is the process. How I'm working about it is the intensity. So I really don't know the time frame, really. It's just exhausting. Topographies, my work with topographies and maps. I can say this is the only practice I have and with my art. I get a lot of questions: when did you start your art? When did you begin? When was this practice? The only practice I can comfortably say is the practice of topography and maps, because it's still an ongoing, you know, it's still about Sudan. Sudan is still moving. And initially, because I actually grew up in Nigeria, Lagos, so my relation with Sudan started from an, you know, a topography, you know, from a top view rather from the, you know, my first steps were outside my country, but my visual relation to it was from a window view. And because we've always been back and forth between Lagos and Sudan. And then we went back to Sudan, and I studied my higher education also abroad in the UAE, and then I left. So this whole topography is the actual practice of my life, you know, of going out and coming outside my country, going out and coming outside my country. So this is why I relate. It's the only way I can relate with Sudan, honestly. Making my own outfit started since I was a child because I was big. That was nothing new. But making, you know, tech to wood block and make my own design, and it's honestly intuitively started. I wanted to put my hands there. I was curious. I'm a curious person by nature, and I wanted to put my hand there. And as soon as I put my hand there, I understood the spirituality in it. I felt all the women, the handcrafts. It's important. It was special. It is special for sure. Specifically, is my grandma, my father's mom. I've never met her, but I'm very influenced by my father and inspired by him. As a Sudanese male figure, he raised, like, we're 5 sisters, so raising women in Sudanese society requires a special kind of man, and my father was that person. But then I focused on who was his mother, and I wanted to dig deeper by his mom, and found out that she's the reason why my father is this person. And yeah. Ooh, this one really, the ABCs of love. It came about at a time where, so 1 year into war, I think that's when I decided I should finally process what actually is happening and what's being lost. And interesting how fabrics and textile, you can relate the loss with it. I don't know why. There's something about the element of textile that very nostalgic, very nurturing, very resisting as well. So then I had, you know, my friend, a good friend of mine who's a curator, curated a show with the UNICEF for Sudan, for children of Sudan. And I wanted to create a piece that was just love, that was just happy, that genuinely brought something that was absolutely not around in my time and at this time, which was love. You know, I wanted to choose another way, and not just choose, I just believe in this heart shape. So I like the idea of also from the needle to the heart shape, and I loved the idea of children are gonna see this, and specifically Sudanese children, and it's one of my greatest accomplishments in terms of projects, honestly. Yeah. So jalabia is a, you know, the everyday dress, and it's not something foreign from the region or the African region. It's a day-to-day comfortable cotton dress that you wear in your house, basically. Funny story, I was absolutely not allowed to wear that in my household growing up. My mom, such a sophisticated woman, she even if she's not going out, she has to dress up at home. So I was not allowed. And to a certain degree, and when I left Sudan to go to study abroad, that's when I'm like, I'm going to be starting my jalabia. That is how, from the fact that, I resisted. But honest to God, the jalabia, there is something, if you look back to the diaspora, the African diaspora, no matter where you're at, no matter how long you're away from your country, you will see the diaspora. If the Nigerian would wear the Kenyan would wear the jalabia, or I don't know the name, but in Sudan it's called jalabia. It's a symbol, you know. It's also a connection. It's good to not forget your identity sometimes. You know, it's actually all the time. It's good to have some reflection of my Sudanism, of where I come from, especially at a time where, you know, you're displaced and you're not in your country. These things matter. This one is actually my friend, a good friend of mine, great jewelry designer, made this. This is called el gamer boba, which she took the origin of the gamer boba in Sudan. it's more of the opposite. She decided to modernize it and put more into it and reshape it into her own ways. And God bless her soul. This Gamar Boba has now become such a phenomenon back home within us, the girls as well. She modernized it, brought it back. In Sudan, December is called the wedding season. And ever since I was a teenager, I never used to call it a wedding season. I say it as it's Sudan's runway season, December. It's when the diaspora, so they're Sudanese, they're also, and I say that because it emphasized on the great role of tailors, you know, and we don't have big fashion houses in Sudan, but when you find a good tailor, because of this wedding season, everyone's going to go ask, what are you wearing? Who's your tailor? And everyone has a shop now. A tailor is everywhere in Sudan. But a good tailor, no matter who you are, even if you're the president's wife, will go to that. And I love that. I loved growing up seeing that. And I loved, you know, because of the lack of availability in ordering things online because of the embargoes in the country. And, you know, we found a way. You know, that's why I love textile. There's that level of endurance. You always find a way with the textile. So runway season in December for sure is about, you know, how you deal with fabrics and, you know, garments. This artwork is an installational work from a performance I made in collaboration with Goethe Institute in Nairobi. And it was a process of movement, hand sewing at the same time while I'm, you know, being embodied in the work itself. So it became an art performance, but also an art piece at the same time. Here is my shrine. You know, I ever since I moved and started living by myself, I have to have shrines. It's a reflection of here. Here as in my mind or my heart or whatever. So this is my mom and my dad, and this is when I was in Lagos. This is my principal and my teacher. This is words from Quran. A lot of Frida Kahlo you're gonna notice. Don't want to say I'm influenced by her, but she's special. What else? Yeah, this is from Sudan. My friend just got me, and this is for coffee actually. Jabina. A lot of candles, of course. Mostly things I collect from the roads or, you know, pick up mostly. You can see this. I think I got it from Naivasha. Here, Karen somewhere. Yeah, that's my dad. That's us. Yeah. Topography, but I am concentrating on the symbolism of it. So like the sun is actually hand sewed here as well. This is more of a postcard, but then the tree is a representation of life and the road and movement as well, as you can see. This is also a map, you know. This is my current practice at the moment. And it's also like handmade paper. It's important for me, you know, to use the I think I work with I work with textile because there's something about textures and energy of the elements I'm using, and this whole process is part of, you know, the process. I'm making this still. As you can see, the needle is still around. I was working on it before I went to sleep. This is actually my actual favorite one. I think it's not going to be acquired. I think it's not going anywhere. This is mine. It's the first time I'm even saying this is my. This actually, in our home back in Sudan, we had one palm tree, and I grew up with that tree, you know. And the last time I saw it, that was before the war, with 2 months. So it was in my head, and I don't know, for some reason I wanted to just look so deeply into that palm tree before the war. I don't know why, I just wanted to look, and now I am, using the process of, you know, also needling it and hand sewing the palm tree and a handmade paper and the symbolism in it as well. And yeah, this all revolves around the symbolism of that. This now is where I'm actually working with the fabric itself. So this is like a whole representation, a whole number of topographies of the land or my country. So these are all intuitive topographies, reimagined, the shape shiftings of the land, the movement, the soil, all through, you know, fabrics and, you know, working with that as well. I want to show you my favorite. It's so interesting how what I'm doing or what I'm creating or practicing is a representation of a country. Like working with it, painting on it, hand sewing it, adding, patching, all this is with that one sole intention of Sudan. So the visual form at the end of the day is Sudan. So I feel like the textile I'm working on is a cultural textile as well, and I'm happy that my heart went for fabrics and textile with this one. Really glad about that. Yeah. If you can notice, all my practice revolves around rituals, revolves around the exhaustion of my body or the self and the body. It started also abroad during university days, and my background is actually international relations. So I was a political scientist by day and an artist by night, because I also, in my dorm, it was also my studio. But because of the lack of movement, and I just wanted the availability, what was around. And I'm also very obsessed with constructions and architecture, and there was always construction around my university, and there were really nice bulky wood shapes that is a waste of a whole building that's been created. And I just wanted to form a dialogue. You know, you're being created, this is a waste, let me carry that waste and let me create something as well. And then with time, you know, I'm a self-taught artist, and learning about the time and learning about the industry of the art, I found out that I am actually part of the discipline of sustainability and environmental and eco dialogues without noticing that I'm doing that. So the intuition I have with sustainability is, I think, started from the ritual of, you know, bending, picking up something and forming a dialogue between what that waste is and what was being created. You know, I'm learning to understand it's each time has its own message and has its own impact. To say I want a specific goal or an impact or an influence, it will limit what the energy of my work is doing. So I wish to always be sensitive to the message of the time. And the message of the time, I wish it's received with truth, which received with clarity, which we'll receive it with action time as well, because this is the time for action. That's what I hope, honestly, with my work in general, is to always be sensitive to the message of the time and be truthful to express it that way. Yeah.
Thank you so much to TBN for allowing me to share your work and your process and your story. I think for us in the fashion space, TBN really invites us to look back into the slow practice, into, you know, our history, our memory, who we are as a people, and how we carry around our memories and how we can express them. So I'm just going to share the next video. We're going to go into textiles. the business of textiles. So we're going to look at the work of Unda Meta. So Unda Meta is an online platform that offers curated African-inspired surface pattern designs for sale, linking print designers, fabric makers, and fashion producers. The co-founders are Teresa Lubano and Dr. Francisca Odundo. So Teresa Lubano is the leads the surface pattern design team at the company. She's also the founding director at Nanjala Design and Shop Nanjala. Teresa has over 20 years of experience working in leading advertising agencies and has a wealth of experience in strategic creative leadership, design management, sustainable innovations in physical and digital outcomes. She has deep experiences and perspectives to utilize the unique mosaic of design influences that appeal to Africa's multi-diverse needs, cultures, and clientele. Teresa is also an adjunct lecturer at the University of Nairobi, Department of Art and Design. She holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in design from the same university, a diploma in IMS, UK, and is a recipient of the Babson College USA 2019 Launch and Grow Kenya Women Entrepreneurs Fellowship Program. Our co-founder, Dr. Francisca Odundo, her career spans as a lecturer in tertiary institutions of education, which spans over 20 years, with vast majority of it in the Department of Art and Design at the University of Nairobi. Here she has had the privilege of teaching printmaking and textile design for several years standing. She has a broad range of experiences in art and design education, which involve links with foreign universities such as Beijing University of Technology, College of Art and Design in China, and IED. Design in Europe. As part of her research, Dr. Odundo has published journal articles and book chapters, given presentations, and been involved in exhibitions. I invite you to listen to Unda Meta. That is the undameta.com website and the range of different textile designs that they have. You can shop by different categories according to your design preferences. These are some of the featured designers on the website. And for designers, you can also sell your design.
My name is Teresa Nanjala Lubano. I'm the co-founder at Unda Meta.
I'm Dr. Francisca Odundo. I'm the other co-founder at Unda Meta.
It all started in a workshop. We met through a workshop that was being organized by the African Hub for Sustainable Creative Economies. And it so happened they had a voucher scheme. So we were being asked to actually do a small research, pilot it, and they were going to sponsor us like £1,000. So I was so interested in surface pattern design because at the time I was doing illustrations. And then also there were gaps, in terms of fashion designers always have a struggle when it comes to looking for fabric. Also, I felt like, when I just thought about textiles in this market, I hardly knew anyone by name who makes textiles, right, commercially. So I felt there was a gap, So Dr. Dundo simply called me after that workshop and proposed to actually partner with us. And I guess that's how we started the research. So it was thanks to the University of Nairobi and the African Hub for Sustainable Creative Economies that brought it to life. Now, we didn't stop at just the project level. We decided to actually go ahead and register it as a business. So in a nutshell, Unda Meta is a marketplace that offers curated African-inspired textiles for sale. Yeah, and we link textile designers with fabric producers, fashion makers, or any individual who's looking to come up with custom pattern for apparel.
The reception has been quite good in terms of interest. we find that there's quite a large number of people who are very interested in our concept, which is, as Teresa has said, digital retailing. So you find that we don't really keep any stock as such. You look through our website, and anything that catches your eye or suits what your uses are, you can order, and we will print on demand. So the interest is very, very high in terms of people being interested in African textiles. I would say that, like any new business, sales are now beginning to pick up as more and more people hear about. First things first, both of us are fundamentally illustrators, very, very interested in producing visuals that not only are aesthetically positive, but visuals that also communicate. You find that the textiles that we have, and also textiles in Africa at large, were used as a very strong means of communication. This comes from color. What does the color tell the audience? To the texture of the fabric itself. What does it tell us about the wearer? What does it tell us about what the wearer wants to communicate? Look at the signs and symbols on it. Because we are both academic, we'll use the name semiotics,
Yes.
but that it just means signs, symbols, and icons. What does this communicate? For us as Kenyans and Africans, this has always been extremely important. We wanted to bring out not just the aesthetic or visual beauty of the textiles, but also the messages that we wanted to send out as Africans to ourselves and to the world at large. So in that respect, very important. If we look at the research that has been done in the country and what I've generally read about the Kenyan dress, for some reason, there's not a very strong pull towards looking for a specific textile that is Kenyan. There's a very strong lean towards looking for the form, the shape, the silhouette of the Kenyan dress, looking for accessories, looking for notions that will be added, such as beads, jewelry. But specifically towards the Kenyan textile, I'd say there's not so much going on in that direction. If I may go further on the topic, I would also say that we cannot run away from the fact that Kenya is a community of people, Kenyans at large, who have a large number of tribes, as we call them. I'd say about how many are there, Teresa? Is it
many? Over
about
40.
Yes, well over 40. And
With
we are,
dialects in
yes, making it difficult to give a precise number.
Yeah.
You find that we're very diverse. We're one, yes, but we're also very, very diverse. So for us to agree is quite difficult. When it comes to the Kenyan dress and the fact that we have not come to a consensus over all these years, we need to begin to ask ourselves if going in the direction of looking for a silhouette or a specific style that will give us the Kenyan dress is the route we actually should be following. Should we, for example, not just come up with a textile that we can all use and fashion in whatever particular way speaks to our soul, speaks to our heart, and speaks to those around us? So this textile becomes the central factor that holds us together. We can also not run away from the fact that Kenyans as a people are very, very forward-thinking. We're always ahead. Look at inventions that we have here, like M-Pesa. I hear that we were one of the first people in the world to adopt it. Yes, to adopt it. So trying to fix Kenyans, Gen Z, millennials, to one style, very difficult. But if we have a textile, maybe we can reach a central point of agreement. I don't know. What do you think?
I
about
agree.
it?
I think I totally agree. I think the challenge is there's such a diverse range of tribes within Kenya. So trying to say Maasai is it, or Luya is it, or Coast it is, from a Kenyan dress perspective is perhaps impossible. And I think also because by nature, as she mentioned, Kenyans are really forward thinking. You know, it's more about the next best thing and not so much a static standard. So it's a very hard thing, right, to sort of crack. And I think her suggestion makes sense. Perhaps it's just like the way in East Africa, Kenyans are known for their kikoi and kitenge. Perhaps it's a certain pattern on a textile that could be, something that could collectively unionize this ideal of having a Kenyan dress. So I totally agree about this.
Kenyan, what we may call Kenyan traditional textiles, I would say that their use has evolved in the sense that they have moved from being that which the younger members of our society saw as that which was worn by older people into something that they could also fashion into a fashion garment. For example, take the lesso, the kanga. You find that in the past it was something that was only used domestically by women to tie around their waist when they were working or to wrap their babies in. But it moved from that in the 80s, the late 80s, into being a textile that could be stitched into a contemporary style dress. So yes, there has been a lot of movement over the years.
The Deras as well has been part of this movement where sort of we're inventing with the same thing. Yeah, so I've seen even people making bags, the tote bags using kanga. I'm also starting to see the textile being put in things as interesting as laptop bags or laptop sleeves. So I think there's an evolution with similar or the same textiles that was used before for the very same reasons she said, into new forms that are now being used in contemporary society, right? Because we have these gadgets. I've even seen a gentleman. I remember I went for a show. It was a Blaze show. This was like in 2019. He was making covers, phone covers with kanga fabric, and he'd actually, he had, I think, a specific size for the Android phone. But this is just goes to show how everyone celebrates the kanga specifically. And I think it has a very rich heritage that people are willing to take it on and carry it forward. So yeah, so there's been an evolution, even from a symbolic point of view. Like the textiles may not be the same as what was there before, because if you look at the kanga, there's celebration of dots and the korosho. But now we are seeing contemporary themes coming forward, whether it's politics. Like recently we had, we had what we call mandamano protests, and there was Anguka Nayo, a Sim Textiles that has actually embraced some of these themes. So the idea of textiles sort of coming through and evolving is there. It's alive. I think for us as Undameta, we're privileged to see some of these themes emerge, and also just to see other themes emerge. And I'll give you an example. I happen to love botanical, illustrations, and that's what I do. Now, it is it's sort of something you don't see as so you don't see many Kenyans doing floral print, but there are people who are doing floral designs, and I think Unameta gives us a platform to showcase what we love, and it's still borrowed from our botanical art, right? Like, what we sort of shape, perhaps, what we see around us. So I think and this is just to iterate that as we grow into the textile industry, we want also African textiles to come into the fore, and authentic African textiles. And we're seeing this now. I mean, if you check our platform, we have over 200 prints, from the traditional prints all the way to contemporary prints, all highlighting various themes, right? So this evolution is really integral to the growth of the fashion and textile industry. I'm also interested in the longest time, textiles has been really industrially done, and also from a commercial point of view, it's been expensive because the minimum order quantities have been 1,000 plus. So you're looking at waiting for very long for your textiles to come out and spending almost a fortune. So mainly it was done on behalf of citizens, right? So I'll give an example, like Rivertex would make a certain pattern for bedding, right? And that's what's adopted. But now, because of innovation within the textile printing industry, we're starting to see a movement from the industrial sort of, lots of material as well as lots of dyes and inks that has its environmental repercussions to now a more eco-friendly way of doing printing, which is essentially and what we do, it's digital printing, which is more eco-efficient in terms of even use of energy as well as water, and of course shorter runs. So we're starting to see people, even an individual like yourself can say, I want to change my cushions, right? And I just want 3 or 4 meters to make my cushions, printing 3 meters. And we made this possible through our platform, which is pretty exciting. Also, fashion designers have the opportunity now to do their, small collections for, say, their examination and print with us. So we're seeing digital printing is sort of the future, as well as it's also print on demand, meaning it's more friendly, in terms of we're not overproducing textiles that we may not need. And yeah, and I think this is where we need to go, considering fashion being second, if not third, the third largest contributor in terms of global emissions. So yeah, we were privileged to actually use and harness digital technology to make this possible for our clients.
The fabrics are produced both locally and internationally. You would ask, why this? The Kenyan textile industry has a long, convoluted, painful history that would be difficult to go into. Well, not difficult, but very time-consuming to go into. By and large, you find us in a situation where once upon a time in the 70s, the textile industry employed the vast majority of people underemployment at the time. We went to the point where this was no longer the case because of certain government and international policies coming forward right into the early 90s, where we had the structural adjustment program and the country was put in a situation where they had to open up importation. Of course, bringing in textiles from the East is cheaper than producing it locally because their industries are far more stable. So as I say, the country has a very long history in all of this. Of course, this has a trickle-back effect where you find that people who produce cotton no longer have a market for their cotton. They stop growing it. It's very difficult to convince them to go back into production. So we find ourselves in that situation whereby, yes, there is currently a demand for cotton, but getting it out of the farmers, very difficult. So we do have industries that buy in all the cotton that Kenyans can produce, but we still have to supplement with importation from the region. That is Uganda, Tanzania, and of course, the East. We're not in a situation where we can do much about that. Then going into synthetic fabrics, of course, they're petroleum-based, so those come in from outside the country. As much as possible, we do provide cottons that are locally produced. That is our goal. That is the direction we take. So that is as far as the actual fabrics we use are concerned. In terms of printing, that is 100% local with us. Yes.
Fabric. This is our fabric swatch book. So we have 15 textiles. So this is Bahati, Baraka. These are other textiles. All these are 100% cotton. I think this is Bedazzle. This is Tangawizi, and so on and so forth. So we have approximately 9 natural textiles, and then right up to, I think, here. Then after that, we now have our polys. Now, each textile, of course, has a different width, a different grammage, a different weight, but they're all spun and woven in Kenya. Of course, as Dr. Gunda had said, some of the raw material could be from India or Uganda, but we're working with local mills, so all this is, here, produced here. So we have we have the key right there at the back, right? Yeah. So this is Dwara Lily, a textiles I designed. Yeah, there you go. Just look closely. Yeah, so something we hadn't mentioned is you're able to actually buy designs, right? Like the file. So we have a designer's exclusive section. It's a closed section on our website where you get to own worldwide license for textiles. So this is one of them actually that you're able to own exclusively, as well as the Pendo Lily, which is this one. Very vibrant. Someone was even saying it looks cow. That is kamba in Kenyan. Yeah. So for our exclusive rights designs, once someone purchases, we delete it from our website. Each design is going for around $400. So I think the future is bright for African textiles. We're inviting textile designers, illustrators, and graphic designers who are interested in being a designer on our platform to simply go online and check for a black button that says sell your design, and literally click that button and create an account. Once they submit their first pattern, we're able to then check and onboard them. Now, to find us, it's simple. Go on to www.undameta.com. You can also email us on info@undameta.com. And for buyers, all you need to do is go onto our website, choose a pattern you love. There are many. We have over 200 patterns, all by African designers. And you're able to then choose a fabric. We have over 15 textiles. From your cottons to your poly cottons, we have a poly viscose. We also have polyester. Now, the range is wide and it keeps growing. So once you choose your textiles, you also will choose the meterage. We start from 3 meters up to 500 meters for digital printing. Once you shop, you'll then deliver your textiles within Kenya within 2 weeks. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Just to add on to what Teresa has pointed out, we currently have African designers uploading their designs on our website. However, even if you're not African, but you're interested in African textiles, you're more than welcome. We have had a couple of Europeans showing interest. Our only ask of them is that they design African textiles. I think it would be very interesting for us to begin to have Asians and Europeans designing African textiles. In the same way, for the longest time, we've had Africans designing European textiles. And as Teresa has said, we only print up to 500 meters per design. We do not want to go back to the situation we were in the late 70s when the government began to control importation. So we ended up with dominance of a couple of companies who were printing textiles that we all had to wear. So we had a national uniform. So for each design, we only print up to 500 meters. However, if you do come in as an individual or company that wants more than 500 meters, as long as you own the design, we do not have a problem printing thousands of meters of the same for you.
And with that, thank you so much, Undameta, for allowing me to share your work. And now we will go to basket weaving with Okapu. I'll share a class that I attended, and let me just add the video. So at Kyondo, Kiondo bags are still very popular up to today. The designs, how they are made, there has really shifted and changed, and also the colors that are used. This weaving process was taught from generation to generation, but Sheila and her team at Okapu have gone a step ahead and offer affordable classes. Sheila Onyango is the creative director and founder of Okapu, which is a social enterprise inspired by the traditional Kiondo basket that I showed in the earlier videos. They make beautiful contemporary Kiondo bags and also offer Kiondo weaving classes to keep the culture alive. Sheila is passionate about African femininity, sustainability, and economic empowerment. She has always loved fashion since her younger days and founded Kapu in 2018 after quitting her job as a project manager in an engineering consultancy firm. I took one of the classes and this is how it went.
So my name is Sheila Atieno Onyango. I'm the founder of Okapu, and today we are having a weaving class, a basket weaving group class. And we're happy to join this vlog and happy that you get to see what we're doing. And join us one day.
Kwa majina naitwa Alice kutoka Mwingi. Nimekuja kufundisha wanafunzi wa huku Nairobi kutengeneza kiondo.
Naitwa Angela Maweke Manzi, natoka Kitui but naishi Nairobi. Nafanyanga kazi na Sheila. Ni mara yangu ya kwanza kuja kufunza wanafunzi, niwaonyeshe venye wanafaa washone.
Kuza products in 2018. 2018 is when I officially registered Okapu as a business. So initially I just used to buy from vendors and then resell online. And then I started to think like, of course, we can do this, we can do that, have many different ideas. So my colleague, we used to work with her when I was still working in corporate. And one day she came to the office to the Kiondo and I was like, where did you get that from? If not from me, I'm the one selling Kiondos here in this office. And she was like, no, my auntie made for me. So like, that's really interesting because I'm looking for people who can take the ideas I have in my head and bring them to life. So she took me to her aunties in Mwingi, and that's when I met Alice. So Alice is a daughter-in-law of my former colleague's auntie. And so she's one of the original like weavers of our group. So we started teaching the weaving in 2022. This came after we got many queries from guys who'd see our bags and they'll be like, oh, I remember my grandmother doing this, I remember my mom doing this, but they didn't get the opportunity to learn directly from the source because of urbanization and the way just life is nowadays. So what you're trying to do is give this kind of people an opportunity to experience basket weaving like our grandmothers did. Sure. When we started, we wanted to make it a full-on experience, like with music and food, a whole Sunday plan. And then that's when we realized it's a bit overwhelming to plan like all the time. So we moved to private classes. So if you wanted a class, you book anytime, any day. But now because of the demand also, now that one became overwhelming because sometimes you'll find that the teacher has a class Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon, Friday morning. So by the time they get to Saturday, they're just so tired. So now we've shifted to doing it every first and third Saturday of every month. So that is since 2022. It has evolved through those many changes. Yeah.
Wanapendeleanga sana kushonanga hizi viondo. Wanapenda sana kama wangejua kutengeneza. Wangetamani sana. Naona wanang'ang'ana sana, zingine wanashona zikiwa zinaenda hivi kobo. So wangefurahia kama wangejua kutengeneza zikiwa sawa. Ndio naendelea kuwafundisha wajue. Kisha nilifundishwa na my mom. Sasa nikaishukua kama kazi na ifanyanga inanisaidia kulea watoto wangu na mahitaji yale mengine. Zile zinatokanga huko mwingi zinakuwa ni kama, sasa niseme nini, ni kama ziko sawa. Sasa tunaitengenezanga tukiwa serious. Sasa za huku Kariakoo watu wanapitia hivi haziko sawa kamili.
Yeah, quality is the difference. Yeah.
Yao ni ya nini? Yao ni si ya makonge, yao ni ya makaratasi, hizo za karatasi. Sasa yao inawekangwa hii side nini ando na hii ingine, and then wanaweka kitu inakaa kamba.
Si unajua tu ni kawaida, mtu akiona kitu kizuri kinaendelea naye anataka kufanya. Ni wandogo na wanajua kutengeneza kama hizi tumati tudogo.
Yeah. So sometimes when I go to see them, their kids always give me like really tiny kyondos that they've been practicing with, because they're looking forward to join the group also.
Sasa alikuwa ananiita ananiambia nikuje nione venye anafanya na nione kama naweza fanya. Sasa nikaendelea na
Ilikuwa nje ama ndani ya nyumba?
Sometimes ni ndani ya nyumba, saa zingine nje. Sasa nikakopi venye anafanya. Siku moja nikatengeneza kakiondo kangu, kanipelekea kwa soko, akaniuzia, akaniletea 50 bob. Sasa nikafurahia sana.
How long ago was that?
Kitambo kama huko 2023 huko
2003.
Huko sina tofauti.
So we have maintained the culture, but the difference is how they used to color. Because back in the day, they used to use natural colors, like they would use tea leaves, they'd use onions, like the purple from the onions, they'd use the brown from the earth and from tree trunks. But nowadays, most people use manufactured dyes instead of natural colors. Most of the browns we use natural, but sometimes now like reds, we use the manufactured dye. But we are looking to really change, because now the natural ones, they're not as accessible. That's the issue. So when you're doing like a mass production, it's a bit harder. But we're trying to see if we can find ways where we can just go all natural. But in the meantime, we have to incorporate both. Normally, by the time students are leaving the class, they've gotten all the basic concepts, but have not finished. They are not able to finish the kendo, so we encourage them to finish at home. We even give you extra materials to go and practice. So Bella actually took it up and finished the one she had in class in like a week or something, and then she sent us the photo. So actually didn't know that she's continuing. So the other days when she sent us the photo that she's actually been practicing and it's going on well. So that really makes us very proud to know that, it's just not for these 3 hours that we are transferring the knowledge. Like if you really want to, after the 3 hours, you can actually turn this into something that you do as a hobby, or you can even do for money, So that was very validating. And I'm looking forward to see when she finishes how it looks like, company number. So if you have like many questions, of course I'll put you in touch with Alice, but Alice, you don't have WhatsApp at the moment, so that's the challenge. But we're looking into ways where we can ensure the continuity, so that even if after the class you're continuing, then you can have, like, if you have questions or anything like that, you have a direct way of finding out what you need to do. So that's one thing we're also looking into. Like Alice, and they're a group of 10. So Alice is just one of the members there. So working with people who have been there, like people like Alice who were taught when they were kids, there is no way you can go wrong because it's innate to them. Sure that people who actually experience the heritage are at the center of the business. They're the ones creating, they're the ones expanding the knowledge. So yeah, just human resource, looking at the people I work with, make sure that we maintain the heritage.
Ongeza zote around. Sijikunje ikiwa kidogo sana. Silikuwa naona ilikuwa karibu kujikunja.
So kukunja inaenda hivyo. Nadhani itakuja vizuri. Tuanza haraka. Kabisa.
Okay, on a personal level, I'm very happy that I got to do this because number one, it has connected me more with Kenyan heritage, with the whole weaving. I didn't know weaving before. And then also it has inspired me because where I'm from in Luoland, we also used to do this, but it's been completely forgotten. You know, at least Alice and her people, they're still continuing. They've managed to commercialize their heritage in a way that it's still maintained but also celebrated. But if you look like where I'm from, it's like people forgot completely that they know how to basket weave. So it's really been inspiring to me to like, this is something that, you know, I can make it my mission to remind everyone how dope basket weaving is. Because basket weaving goes all the way to 10,000, thousands and thousands of years. So it would be nice to keep it alive in this age of AI and mechanization. We need such things to keep us connected and grounded. So yeah, my parting shot will be come and experience it. It's not a lot of money. So we actually made it cheap so that it can even be even more accessible to more and more women, even men. We've had male clients, which was also like surprising to me, but I've really enjoyed it. Some of them were even better than the women. So it's just opened Okapu up to a new world that we're really enjoying.
Nafurahia hii kazi kwa sababu inaendelea mzuri. Tunamwombea Sheila aendelee miaka mirefu, natupelekaga mbali kwa sababu sio mapenzi ya Mungu zingekuja huku Nairobi kama zingemjua. Sasa namuombeanga kwa Mungu miaka mingi.
That's so sweet.
Wote wakabila wote, wazungu wote, kila mtu na lugha yake. Nampenda, akuje nimfundishe.
And that is it for our videos. So thank you so much to Okapu, to Undameta, and to Tibian for allowing me to just join. I'm hoping that all of you have learned something. And now I invite Teresa and Dr. Odundo and Sheila just for conversation. I see there's some comments that have come. Thank you so much for joining. I have a few more questions. So for the ones who do not understand Swahili, could you please explain the meaning of the names of your brand?
Should I start?
Yes, you can start with you, Sheila.
Okay, the meaning of my brand's name is Okapu, which is derived from the Kiswahili word kikapu, which literally means basket. But because I'm a Luo woman and our tribe, we have a tendency of liking the letter O. You'll notice even most of us, we have O in our names. Like I have Onyango, there's Odundo. Yeah. So back in the day, like in our community, my grandmother would not say, give me that kikapu. She would say, O kapu. So our grandmothers and women back in the day used to call their handbags okapu. So that's where the name came from.
Wow, learned something. I'd like to allow Dr. to respond to the question. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for the question. The name comes from the Swahili words unda, which means to make, and meta, which means to shine. Make the fabrics and shine in them.
Wow.
Interesting that
thank you.
It's interesting that
Yep.
also the word meta means in Greek to change or alteration. So it's very interesting to see the metaphor around it being a transformative journey with us. Also, Meta happens to be a name that is known in English by a very big brand that we well know. But we weren't copying them, we promise. We were just using the Swahili word, which means to shine. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I also wanted to ask, what type of trends have you noticed or themes? You spoke, both of you spoke about themes and trends that you've seen for Kapu in your classes. I would like to know what type of, because students get to choose their own colors and their own combinations. What type of themes have you seen, whether it's the foreigners or the local students? And also for the team at Undameta, what are the themes that you see from the designs that have been submitted? Let's start with Sheila.
Yes, what I can say is foreigners for sure don't like bright colors. They like their earthy tones, they like the browns, the dark greens, fall type of colors. And Kenyans, there's also a big number that also don't like bright colors, but you'll find that when we have bright colors, it's the local people who tend to gravitate more towards the bright colors. So that's the most significant, I would say, trend is in choice of colors. Yeah. And also we have seasons where you'll find like purple is trending, well, according to the way they do the fashion weeks and things like that. So as a brand, we also try sometimes to incorporate this knowledge because we know like on the global scene, there are specific colors for specific fashion seasons. Sometimes we do incorporate it, but most times we go freelance knowing that for foreign goods, we stick to the earth tones, but with Kenyan clients, we can play around with the bright colors.
It's interesting that she mentioned for foreign and then for local. It's very interesting because I think it's the very same thing you see playing out on our website. So one thing I've noticed, and it's not really quite about color, it's about trends. We don't follow international trends I think we see that international trends are very Eurocentric, and therefore the designers don't just use it. It's not a template for us. Now, some of the themes that we've seen come through strongly are spinning past semiotics, such as the paisley, which is a very Indian British construct, into new forms on our kangas. We've seen that, and also bringing in some of the kanga influences, like the dots, into some of the designs. You see it happening without actually people knowing that it's something they've seen often, and that's why they're bringing it in. Other themes are sort of kind of natural, like nature. There's a lot of nature. You see people being inspired by the bees or florals. And then also we've seen a lot of geometric shapes. And I think this is also something that is innately African, where there's a lot of triangles, circles, rectangles, that play in different forms and shapes. And also we're starting to see animals, like there's someone who's doing African, the big five, and I think this just goes to show that we're celebrating our wildlife. I don't know if Dr. Dundu, you have anything else to add?
No, I don't. I think you've pretty much expressed what we see.
Thank you for that. As we listened to, Tibian's process, there was a lot that goes into the process of her design, for her from the start of what she wants to create to the end product. So I'm curious to know what kind of processes is involved in the type of work that you do in your design process, whether it's making the Viondo bags or on the website. Nanjala, Teresa, I know you have a background in illustration, so I'd like to also hear about your process more.
Okay, so for me, the design process is very chaotic. I mostly respond to the universe. So you'll find sometimes I go to the market and I see a really, really nice Kyondo. So I take it to Alice and her friends and the group, and they try and replicate it. Sometimes sometimes Alice and the group of weavers, they create their own things just to show me, like, look at this one we made, look at this one we made. And then, if it's nice, we'll put it in production, or, I'll make my own suggestions. Maybe I'll be like, I don't like yellow and neon together, And then, but most of the times it's me responding to something that has caught my attention. Or sometimes, like I was mentioning before, with the fashion trends, I mean, I don't really try and copy what the Western people do, but I just use it as an inspiration. Like, for example, maybe I can tell, like, this year, like Louis Vuitton and Gucci and the rest, they've showcased a lot of bucket bags. So yes, we'll make the Kyondo the way it is, but I will finish it as a bucket bag instead of a sling or instead of a two-handle bag, because I've noticed the trend on the internet or in the global scale is people are really feeling bucket bags right now. So yeah, so for me, I'm more of a responsive type of designer than sitting down and saying, okay, now we are going to make this. Yeah.
Thank you, Kapu, for that. So I'll speak for the designer. Normally it starts with a sketch. You'll be inspired by something. You'll pick a pen and draw on paper. We normally start from a sketch. Then you won't see the pattern to start and to begin with, but as you go along, I guess you will be seeing what inspires you, like the colors that inspire you. Perhaps you like a certain bag someone bought for you, or you like a certain pattern on someone's dress. And then you now go ahead and actually combine certain shapes or sketches that you've done into a pattern. Now, that means scanning. Usually we'll scan from a phone and then put it into a computer. We normally manipulate our designs using Illustrator and Photoshop, primarily Illustrator because it's more precise and you can also be able to trace. Choose your colors from a color palette. I normally use Pantone because the spot colors, you're kind of sure how it'll end up looking. Then create a repeat motif across specifications that are on our website. We normally work with a set standard of 150 centimeters by 100 height. And that's because most of our printers use this size. However, depending on the width of the textiles, Undameta normally revisits the pattern file and corrects the dimensions. But we normally keep the repeat motif similar to what the designer has actually made. Then, of course, now it's taken to the printers, and the printers would then create a digital file that is able to be recognized by their machines. And I guess then the printing process begins, which is usually a digital print, which means it's super, super fast. Fabric is fed onto the spool. Printer prints what it sees, exactly just like the way a cartridge printer does see the textiles. And if it's a short run, in a matter of minutes, you have your textiles. So that's the process.
Can I ask, so does that mean, like, for example, if they weave a pattern and then I take a photo of it, it can be printed into a fabric?
Well, that's a very good question.
Yeah.
Now, that is not the case. So it's just halfway through the journey of creating a file that's ready for print. So just to answer your question, because it's a technical question, you would still be creative to redraw and recreate image of that shape that was taken into a layered file, what you call a layered file. And it's really sort of analogies because it needs to be very clean, crisp, not vague or pixelated. The word is pixelated. So yeah, so there's a bit of crafting to mimic that image that was taken, and we do not print images. So we normally print print-ready files that have very sharp, clean lines, because you also don't want like a print that's smudged or blurry. Yeah, so I hope I've answered your question.
Yes.
So yeah, so not at the
Just to
moment.
add to that, Teresa has spoken to the reproduction work that has to be done on the image. You also have to take into consideration that you then have to convert it into a repeat pattern.
Yeah.
There's several steps to it. In fact, the picture can actually just simply be viewed as inspiration and nothing more than that, considering the amount of work that has to go into it. But it is a very good start, I'll say that.
So I guess for me, I would give that photo to an illustrator, and then he does they do the rest, yeah, before they.
Right. And we have that it's provided in-house if you'd like that to be at a small fee. But yeah, normally we would have to recreate the image into a file that's print worthy. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think that kind of collaboration would be so interesting because you have such unique patterns, and then translating them onto fabric, that would be so very interesting. I'd also like to find out about, in both of your works, you sort of open up to other people. So on Undameta, other designers can log in and, create their designs and sell their designs with you. And in Okapu, you teach these classes where students get to learn, almost like design level apprenticeship. So I wanted to find out, why did you choose to open up, to other people, or to open up to work with others, on a collaborative level, whether it's the teaching, sometimes people would start a business and they'll just, keep it to themselves. I would like to know what was the inspiration behind opening it up to more people.
Well, for me, it's definitely more fun to work with other people. And you know, the world is so small nowadays. You can achieve way more working with people than doing things by yourself. So, and also working with people create a sense of community, which is important for a brand also. And even brands in general moving forward, like community has become a very important part of growth as a business for any business. And working with other people, you know, you get to fuse communities together. So I think it's just much more fun for me as a creative to work with other people. Yeah.
For Undameta, I would say that one of our major values is sustainability. We believe very strongly in social sustainability. Opening up our platform to other designers allows other designers to earn something small and keep body and soul together. That's extremely important to us. And borrowing from what Sheila has said, there's a famous saying, if you want to go, if you go alone, you go fast, but if you want to go far, go as a group. I think I've said it right.
Yeah, I wanted to say that one as well, but it
Yes.
escaped my mind.
I took the words out of your mouth. So I think that's also quite important. The whole sense of community. It gives a very high degree of longevity to what we're doing. It's something that other people can take up and grow in a big way.
Yeah, just to add also, for me, I think the challenge has been that we know so many celebrated Western and Eastern designers, and we do wear their patterns. But part of why we started Undameta was we also wanted to celebrate the African culture and heritage that comes within the continent. And when I looked around, when we looked around, we didn't quite see where that space was, particularly for surface pattern design. So I think when you're looking at, just celebrating the arts, it should be fair, right? So we're giving a voice to African designers, illustrators, and printmakers, because for a very long time, they've been, unknowns. They've been people we don't know. I mean, I can speak of William Morris, for example, someone I really admire, who's a British architect and designer, and was studied. I studied his works, but who studies African arts and crafts, right? In art history. So I think for us, we're creating a space to celebrate and just celebrate our own. There's someone I met the other day who was really in love with Undameta, and he was like, you know what? African is ours, but it's not ours. And I think it's true, right? We have a great culture, but it's other people who celebrate our own works, right? In fact, we wear other people's works. So how about us giving an opportunity for someone to wear a Chep Kemboy, or to have a bag by Okapu, or to, and so on and so forth. So I think we need to start looking at our culture as being so rich. I'd love a painting from, an embroidery painting from Tibian, because I really relate with her poignant, soulful art, right? About her culture and where she comes from. And I think giving a voice to the African cultural heritage, whether contemporary or traditional, is very important in building, the cultural arts, as well as, leaving our mark and actually being celebrated for it, and as well as giving a name to the person behind the art, which is something we don't do naturally, right? Yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you for that. You've actually touched on something very important about the impact of the type of works that you do. So far, what type of impact have you seen, or what type of impact do you foresee with the work that you do in the industry, especially industry, and also, in the country, especially in this? So just to give context to those not in Kenya. So recently, the government set aside a really big budget of 100 million Kenya shillings, which translates to about $1 million almost. And they set this money aside specifically to look for, a Kenyan dress. This is a conversation we've had since the late 60s, the 70s. It's always been a recurring question that has never really been answered. So I just want to ask both Okapu and Undameta, what do you foresee as the impact, or what have you seen as the impact of the work that you do?
Okay, the impact of my work. Well, economically, the women, they have an extra sense, what is it called? Income to supplement their needs, because where they live actually also sometimes it gets really, really dry. They suffer bouts of drought, and the World Food Program comes in and help them. Like, they have to depend on the World Food Program. But at least with the Okapu money, they can actually buy food stuff from the shop instead of waiting for the aid, or also to add on to the aid. Socially, I would say, like, when I started, like I mentioned in the video, I started as a reseller of just the basic kyondos that we see in the market. At that time, when I started, which was about 2015, to do reselling, Kenyan people were not carrying kyondo bags as something that this is my handbag that I'm carrying. Most people preferred westernized types of bag at that time. But because of, I would like to say I'm part of the reason, and other also kyondo sellers online. At that time, when we started selling online, we saw more and more girls taking it up as this is something that I can actually carry and look nice. Because the first kyondo bag I sold, I didn't even sell with the intention of selling. I just bought for myself because I saw it in the market and I liked it. And then my friend saw it and she was like, I really like the bag, the way it looks with the jeans. Can you sell it to me? So I just sold it to her without even thinking of profits. And like, just give me the money, I go get a replacement. And then when I did the replacement, my other friend, so for me, what I interpreted it at that time was people didn't really know that you can style a kyondo bag and it looks nice. It was mostly actually foreigners buying from the market. Because even if you go to the market now, you'll find that they've had to significantly reduce their prices, because before their main customers were tourists, and they used to sell something that was selling for 3,000 like 30 years ago. Now it's just 800 shillings because now of the demand of the local market. So I would say for me as a brand, I would like to grow my brand to be a sense of identity for Kenyan. Like, even for the debate that you brought up for the dress, I'm like, the kiondo is right there. The kiondo is right there. We might not need a dress. It doesn't have to be a dress. We have a bag. Because there's one time I actually met a Nigerian and I showed her my bags. I was like, oh, these Kenyan bags. So actually people outside already identify kiondos as the Kenyan bag, because our baskets are very different from the ones that are produced in Ghana and from South Africa. So already there's an identity. It's just that we've not scaled it to a level where it's nationally recognized as part of our identity. So even like a lot of my customers are people going to the diaspora, or they're buying gifts for their little sisters and cousins who are going to live in Europe and America and abroad. And for people, when they go there, they carry the okapu as, this is something from home. So for me, that's the impact we're working towards. Like, can be something that, first Kenyans and then Africans can identify as something from home. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Sheila. And Teresa, maybe you have something to say?
Yes, I think Dr. Dundo was trying to reach out because she's gone offline. Yeah, I think it's a very interesting question you ask. And for us, there's so many ways we can respond to that question. But I think what's truly, truly important is that for us, we feel the creative arts are very diverse, and pattern design is just one of many that ought to be celebrated, right? And what we see beyond just the monetary or the economic benefits are that we're elevating our own art, right? Because there's a sense of identity that is tied to that which is our own. And so what hasn't come natural is showing this to the world, right? It normally is cocooned in our tribes, in my room or in my space or with my colleagues, but it's hardly ever been shown to the world proudly, right? So for us, we give designers, and it's X number of designers. I think you heard it's not really that you're an African, it's that you can design from an African lens or be inspired by the African continent. We want to give people that opportunity to pursue their talents and showcase it. And the great part about our platform is that we're online, right? So anyone in the world is able to see your design, not just 10 people, your villagers and your citizens in the country. No, this is a global platform we're giving everyone to appreciate, African design, because it does exist. And we want these people to be known, heard, and seen. And of course, if there's some monetary gain they can get from it, that's great, because one of the struggling things about this part of the world is that there are so many young people who are looking for jobs and they're unable to get them. So we open up our platform to ensure that everyone is having a leg in the door, to being known, because it's through being known that people will participate or engage with you or collaborate, right? So look at Undameta as a curator, but also a producer of African textiles, and sustainably so, because even if you're, for example, a student, right? You no longer have to go, I don't know, to River Road or to Nairobi Textiles. I mean, they're great brands, or the marketplace to look for something and make do with something. You're able to then now craft your own and say print 3 meters of your work and have it ready in good time for your pinup or your fashion show. So we're saying we're giving designers as well as the public creative expression and creative license, not at a premium. It's at a good a good rate where everyone is compensated in the value chain fairly without polluting our environment. So our big picture is really to see African art and culture on the world stage, just like Vera Wang, just like Louis Vuitton, just like H&M and Zara. We really feel Undameta can get to that point. And it's only by, as Okapo had said, as well as Dr. Odundo had said, it takes an army of people, right? And everyone should be a participant, right? So we don't look at this as competition. We look at it as collaboration.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yes, you don't look at it as competition, but as collaboration. Even when you're saying that, I was just thinking of the Swahili proverb, the way we say umoja ni nguvu, which means there's strength in unity. So thank you so much for sharing. You've also brought something up about the way Kenyans usually look at what we make here as things that they would gift to when they're traveling abroad, or they would it's not something that they would wear as their everyday. Well, in your experience, why do you think that is so? What do you think is the reason for that?
To be honest, it's a grand brain. We just believe that which is European is more superior. It's a conditioning, and it's because it comes from, sorry to say this, but I think it comes from how we've been raised, educated. So I think we've really held back our culture, and I think it's about time we celebrated it. We raised it up on a pedestal. I was telling Chepkemboy today, I'm wearing something African. It may not be Undameta, but it is African, and I'm proud that it's coming from, an African community that's in West Africa. This is Ankara, right? I love that she's wearing beadwork from Masai from here. So I think we need more of that. And Okapu is wearing a beautiful beadwork from, I think, Sabaot or Masai. So I think, and even her outfit has semiotics from the African culture. So everyone loves our work. Look at Wakanda, look at the movie. They designed their outfits from, tribal regalia and fashion from this continent. So why is it that, we don't wear it enough, we don't speak of it enough, and we don't promote it and support and invest in it. So yeah, so we're playing our part. And we invite all of you to see it that way.
Also, because Teresa mentioned it boils down to programming. So even for Africans, I think there's also a gap in terms of fashion media or in the fashion ecosystem, like the things that actually make you want to buy stuff. Because if you look like at Western fashion, the reason people get hyped, there's a system, like the seasons, they're stylists, magazines are printing styles, magazines are showcasing styling ideas. Like the way I said, like in the beginning, my friend was like, I didn't even know a kiondo can look that nice. Sell it to me, you see? So sometimes I also think like, okay, social media has really helped to help designers to put our work forward. So if I think more people share the work and really put out like this is something that you can afford also, and it looks nice, and you can wear it often, it's functional. So, like even back in the day, kiondos were just for weekends and going abroad. But I have customers who tell me that they carry their kiondo to work every day, and it actually looks nice with their official outfits. So, on top of what Teresa said, I think there's also a gap in fashion media. If we also intend to program our people into making them frequent consumers of African fashion, then we can also get there.
Now, to add to the discussion on why we do not wear our own, I'll speak for Kenyans specifically because that is the market that I know. And I'd like us as Kenyans to reflect on design in the country. It's very easy to complain that Kenyans are not wearing that which is coming forth from our market. I'd like to turn it around and ask this question. Look at what our large cotton mills are producing and ask yourself why you do not wear it. Maybe you don't wear it, not because you appreciate Western style more, or because you have been brainwashed. Maybe you don't wear it simply because you don't like the design. I want us to ask ourselves how much producers in this country respect designers, how much they respect design knowledge, how much they respect artists. Do we have producers in this market who think that they can avoid us, not pay us, or pay us a pittance, so that what they are capable of producing as makers is not that which is acceptable or palatable by our market, particularly at the large production scale? Of course, when you're talking about smaller items that can be made domestically, like a kiondo, it's a lot easier for artists to express themselves in that form and sell it, as has been shown by Okapu. However, when you come to the big industry, how many textiles from here do you actually like? I think there has to be a very strong appreciation of makers and designers so that we are paid for what we do, so that what we do is respected in a manner that causes us to want to go into meaningful production. I remember a couple of decades ago when if you told your parents you wanted to become an artist or a designer, they immediately assumed that you were signing up to become a vagabond. Is this still continuing? That is what I would ask. Thank you.
Just to follow up on that, Dr. Odunda, what do you think could be done, in your opinion, to make the arts and the culture and the heritage appreciated more? What do you think we can do here? Because I can see there are a lot of us from the Kenyan fashion industry, from the international fashion industry. What do you think we can do about that right here?
Agree to pay designers and artists their worth so that you can bring the best out of them and bring the best into the market. With that, appreciation will grow. For example, sorry to take us back in history, but if you look at the European scene and look at people like Michelangelo, not only was he an artist, he was also a doctor, an engineer. Back in that day, artists were respected and put on a pedestal. we need to respect artists here and we need to pay them what they're worth. When you go to European countries, people who go into arts and design become multimillionaires, but the same cannot be said for here.
Thank you for saying that. So also
Sorry,
just to follow up. Okay,
add one,
okay, Teresa.
sorry, to add one thing. I think also there's a tension, and it's tied to the larger politicals that goes on. So sort of capitalism. Just to highlight one instance, I feel like when we also accept to bring in that which is not ours, for example, like imports of textiles, and that's something we can do, that also contributes to stifling the appreciation for our own work. And why I'm saying this is because in our market, that is Kenya, we are one of the biggest consumers of, secondhand clothing, tumba. And what that does is that in as much as it does bring incomes to those who sell Mtumba, the challenge is that it stifles another industry, which is a very big industry, which was thriving before, which is the local manufacture of textiles. So I think the onus is on also the government to start sort of striking a balance and thinking about its own citizens and where the most benefit would be. Is it to rely on cheap imports, which now we know is sort of textile waste, and work backwards? And recycling is really not being done to its optimum. Worldwide, textile waste is only being recycled at 1%. So you can imagine what happens to the 99%. So I think that's working backwards. What should happen is that we as a nation should also make the call and say, we would like to produce all our textiles locally and then supplement with ready to wear or put caveats that make sense, and therefore bolster up the industry so that people now know the true value of Okapu's textiles, Okapu's weaving, and pay the true value of it. Or in our case, know the true value of textiles as well as pay for it, because there are very many people in the value chain. So I think it's a very important conversation that I think policymakers need to start looking at seriously, simply because also we're entering an era where we need to start looking at, climate action. How is sub-Saharan Africa and Kenyan specific tackling that issue? Considering fashion is the third biggest contributor to climate change, right? So I think there are tensions, and I think if we can just see where the gaps are, mine is, really sort of a totalitarian call to say, let's stop imports, at least for a few years, for 10 years, and see what that will do to the industry. And I think marvelous things will happen. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Teresa. Also still on that note, when you, just to go back to, you spoke about Wakanda, and, around the time when the Wakanda movie came out, there was this whole upsurge of, African fashion, African, even like right now, African songs, even on the continent itself. Why do you think that is so from your experience? Even you, Sheila, why do you think, you said, when your friends saw you with a bag back in before you started your business, but then now suddenly when she saw the bag, she was like, oh, this makes sense. Why do you think there's been that upsurge of, appreciation, sort of appreciation that also African cultures come sort of also to the forefront? These conversations are happening now. Why do you think it's happening in this time and space?
I think it's just the movements of the universe. What was down is now coming up. What was up is now going down. So I think that for me, honestly, I would say that's the reason, because even for Afrobeats, it's been there for long, but suddenly now people are more interested. Like you said, the Wakanda film. So people are more interested in Africa, probably with a different lens. I think people have always been interested in Africa, but there was a condescending tone before, but now there's more appreciation, because for me, I think it's just the shift of the universe that we're in right now.
That's a very interesting angle, Okapu. I find it's one that I'm mulling over. Mine's a bit different, Chokemboy. I think when you look at African crafts and art, there's something so marvelous and special about it. And it's simply because it was tied back to culture. African culture is very rich. Like look at the Maasai, for example, the initiation, the wedding ceremonies, how painstakingly time is taken to make that beadwork, right? So I mean, when I hear the Western people talk about slow fashion, I wonder, Africans have been the slowest, like that's why our work is so special. We don't mechanize our work. We don't, there's no one size and it's the same throughout. Like for us, and I see this like it's a bright light. Like why African art is so special is because it is crafted, Look at Tibian's process and technique. Look at even the basketry that she did with the lady. You can see it takes time. Whereas industrialization, I mean, thanks to machines, which is really great, it's made everything efficient, is great. But the idea is it churns them out fast and it's not nice. It's quick, fast, boom, boom, boom. Everything looks the same. There's homogeneity, whereas in African craft, there was a meaning, a reason behind those colors. There was a special way it was made because it was for a certain person in society, A woman going for a wedding would wear different beadwork from a woman who's still a teenage or a virgin. Or a Maasai Moran would have a very special way of making their hair. And when they became elders, they shaved it off and became something else and did something else and so on and so forth. There's something very regal about something called the process of making things by hand that is still not appreciated. And I echo this because, in the West, they know how to package it. Like, look at Italian leather, that's handcrafted. It's bloody expensive because a shoe takes, I don't know how long to make. Whereas in Africa, we take that long, but we don't put value to it, right? So you take a whole, like Okapu, your bags should not be less than 3,000 bob each, right? Because you take so much time to make it together, right? But because we set the standard of pricing based on how much we can make quickly now and, because we're hungry, we sort of undervalue our products. And also, we don't package ourselves right. Look at the stories that are told by Westerners, right? They've mastered their own language and they're able to package their work and sell it. And I think personally, I've worked I've worked with people in the West, like in the developed world, and I see the difference like day and night, right? They know how to package. It might be something as simple as, a comb, but they'll talk about the type of plastic, they'll talk about where they got the colors, they'll talk about so many things. And you're just wondering, my gosh, how does this contribute again to the comb, that the fact that it's still a comb? But yeah, that's the thing. We don't know how to do, we haven't mastered it. And I think it's many things. It's just the fact that we are not commercial. Commercialization of our own craft came with the Westerners and during colonization. And therefore, we don't know how to do it. We were sitting with our mothers at the fireside as we make things. We never thought of, selling it. In fact, we thought of giving it as a gift to someone, right? So I think we need to sort of start asking ourselves questions about the intent when we are creating things, and also how are we packaging it and pricing it. Those are things that I think are very, very difficult to discuss, because let me just be honest, everyone who comes to me for my work, they always say I'm expensive. And I'll tell them, okay, why do you think I'm expensive? And I'll take time to actually tell them why I think that's the true value of my work. As Africans, we need to get to the point where we hold our work on a pedestal, just like, if not, our work is even more better, if you know what I mean. Like, because we take so long to do the work, we use local material, no one is the same as the next, meaning it's not machine done, and not machine done means they sew into it. That's a value that we need to attach. And then also, we know who's made it. Okapu, the person who's making your product. In other parts of the world, and I'll just be honest, I won't name names or brands. There are brands where creative directors absolutely don't know who the tailors and the ironers and and the weavers were. Absolutely don't, because the raw material and the fabric comes from sweatshops in various parts of the world where people are earning below the just basically a wage that is not even sustainable, for the simple reason that they want to sell the product cheap. But the problem is these people are being discriminated upon. They're not being paid right. They're living in appalling conditions. So I think there's a lot to learn as artists and creators. I know it takes time for you to sell your work to its true value, but I think with education, we must start there. We must start looking at our work and saying it's great work. A lot of input has gone into it, and therefore attach a price that is commensurate to the amount of work that has gone into it. Thank you.
If I may contribute to this as well, I would say that the initial question, as I understood it, was why there has been greater interest in African works of art or textiles or fashion. I would say that this growth of interest is not specific to Africans. I think that there has been growth in levels of interest of crafts from all over the world. And I believe it's been called globalization, where we've gone global, but we're also local. And I think that this has happened due to a very great contribution of technology. We cannot overlook how technology has helped this happen, where we have moved from the era of multinationals to the ability, the small scale producers now have the ability to design, produce, and manufacture their products at a small scale, just like Undameta is doing. So you find that production systems have gone digital, and this is a great help. Apart from this, distribution channels have also massively improved. Look at, for example, the courier services that we have. We also have a situation that because of technology, payments can be made worldwide, not just payments, but secure payments that happen in a very short space of time. Apart from this, technology has also contributed. Because of communication, we're now able to touch each other across the world. We're able to communicate with each other, tell each other what we're doing, promote what we're doing as individuals. So yes, I would say that there has been an increase in interest, but it's not specific to Africa. And I would urge all artists and producers to begin to take advantage of technology and what it can do for you as a producer to promote what you do, to grow your markets, and to ensure that you're able to make a living wage from what you do. Thank you.
Thank you for that. If there are any questions, please put them in the chat. We can take up some questions. Also want to ask if Erica or Angela have something to say. Angela, I know you're leaving in a few minutes. So if you have any question that you'd like to ask or comments, really welcome them.
Well, I mean, thank you so much. I've been listening, I've been incredibly fascinated how, these local conversations happen. And I think that is the first start, right? That's also the key of the Global Fashioning Assembly, to initiate and to encourage and to nourish these local conversations, And I think, I mean, what I've been questioning for quite a while now, I think also, through the conversations that we've had throughout the year, is this: what does it mean to consume consumer goods that are kind of like not part of your identity? I understand the financial, aspects of it, like, how can we reach those global markets? How can we, use technology to reach out to, improve distribution and payments. And I think maybe, from that decolonial lens or perspective, where we are seriously worrying about, the homogenization of, the loss of cultural diversity through globalization, right? The sacrifice zones, the I mean, we're talking about sustainability on many, many levels, but, what about the cultural sustainability, right? That culture doesn't become only a consumer good, but also, that's literally at some point going to be our way of survival if we have that cultural diversity so that we can respond, through what is coming our way. I mean, look at, monoculture in nature. We know how destructive it is. Maybe we don't yet have a full grasp of what, monoculture in cultural diversity is leading to. So I think, yeah, what I'm kind of like grappling with is how do we kind of like, I don't know, marry in a way this how do you say that? The opportunities maybe that technology and globalization and, expansion of markets may offer financially, and how do we keep track of what it does in terms of cultural sustainability, maybe? I don't know if that's a question to anybody in particular, or if anybody wants to respond.
Please repeat the question.
Yeah,
So
I think it's
sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, let me just, it's a very tough question, I must say. I'll make an attempt from my lens. And I think it's intrinsically tied to what we do as Undameta, which is quite fascinating. Okapu just asked a question in this session where she said, is it possible that there's a color I love on a kiondo that I'd like to translate it so that I'm able to create a print for it, right? That was the question. And I was like, not in that way. There's certain processes. But I think to use that example, I'd like to say that we cannot run away from technology because it has such great gains, right, for us. But then now to your question, culture is something that is slowly eroding, right? Because we're entering an era where there's going to be homogeneity because of X, Y, Z. So I think the idea is to actually do transculturation, and I've actually written a paper around it. It's simply what we've been doing for many years, where culture keeps evolving. So I feel like culture, the African pattern in the meta sense, the surface pattern designs that we make are African, but now we're using technology, which is the new construct, to showcase them in whatever products. That's a way of preservation of culture, right? So in as much as we may go to a museum or look in books what our ancestors or our fathers did, we still will hold some of these semiotics and strands of culture into new things. And I even gave the example during the videos that you watched, where I said, I know people who are using the kanga, not for what it used to be, which was to swaddle babies as covering for clothing, but we're now starting to see them being used for iPhones, right? iPhone covers and sleeves and laptop bags and being put on, tote bags, and so on and so forth. So I think it's not perhaps 100% preservation of the culture as it was, but an evolution of it, and a transculturation of this moving forward, right? I think that's my attempt to your answer. Yeah.
And Sheila?
I need to take the question again.
I think from what I understood is sort of, when as your business is expanding or expanding to global markets, even in the teaching, weaving classes, so you have tourists, how do you still preserve, the culture? How do you still maintain it in its sort of as original as possible in all this, as much as you're expanding? I think that's what I understood. Or maybe Angela,
Maybe,
you can
yeah. I mean, it's very complex. Don't get me wrong. I mean, so I don't see culture as in it should, stay it to its whatever authentic or original or what we call so-called traditional forms or shapes. We know that cultures evolve in relation to a context, in relation to a community, in a relation to a human and a non-human environment. That's why we have this incredible diversity of cultures throughout the world, whether it's from climate, whether it's from, you live by the sea, you live in the mountains, you live in the, so cultures have evolved in relation to a place, a time, a situation, a context. And now through globalization, so the way I kind of like describe it, so we used to construct identities through relationality. How do we relate to our environment? How do we relate to our community? How do we relate to our past, to our ancestry? So identity used to be constructed through relationality. So what I wear is literally kind of book of what tells who I am, where I'm from, where I'm going even. And now through globalization, or especially, let's say, capitalism, consumerism, we construct identities through consumption. As in, if I buy this whatever good object that I don't know where it was made, I don't know who made it, I can't even read the object, right? As in the symbolism or the signs or the colors or right? So I just can consume it, and then I can also discard it. And so basically on a daily basis, I can be anybody, anywhere, anytime, anyhow, I mean, just to simplify it a little bit. So, and in that sense, that relationality is getting lost. And so it also impoverish us a lot, as in how we relate to our, again, human and non-human worlds. We all know that we're facing an incredible crisis, or we're already in the midst of it, but we're still kind of like in denial. So how much, again, based on monoculture in agriculture, we're ending up with species that don't have the flexibility anymore to adapt to new situations. So it's exactly the opposite of not essentializing culture, but keeping its flexibility and its quality to adapt. But because of, let's say, efficiency, right? Capitalism is all about efficiency. How can I produce more in a smaller amount of time so I can increase, production? That's where a lot of that flexibility actually gets lost. The knowledge of why, certain things look the way they look. And I think the value shift from the process to the object. And again, it's a very complex.
The more you speak, the more I think it should all be archived in digital 3D renders. The more I think about it, the more I think there's now more room for cultural preservation through through packaging cultures in avatars, or sort of like, this is, for example, there's a community called the Kikuyu. It's the largest community in Kenya, so they have a very rich culture. So the Agikuyu, who are born before colonization, are very different from when we were colonized, and also are very different from the era or let me just say the different hundreds of generations are very different, right? It'd be interesting to see researchers or scientists and designers come together and see how we can create like avatars of these cultures, just that, like, that one culture can have perhaps 5 iterations, and it's sort of like in a museum, where you go, say, and watch the Agikuyu for like 3 hours just to appreciate their evolution. And where it stops is where it continues. And, I feel like there's room for perhaps AI and is it virtual reality to sort of, play in this context and create what was, what is, and what is continuing, so that there's a continuum of culture. I think that would be something.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, I agree on the documenting because, like, for example, our classes, all students who have come have taken content, nearly all have taken content and they've shared on their social media. It's backed up somewhere in their Google Drive because they just took it. Myself, as the founder, I have so many videos and pictures of people weaving, of the women just weaving in the village for our own production. I have so many videos of that. So I actually transferred so many things in a hard drive because also the cloud, we never know. One day the internet can shut down. According to conspiracy theorists, that's coming soon. So, so I put all videos and pictures, all the bags we've ever made is in a hard drive. So I think for me, that's the best way I can do it in terms of basket weaving, to make sure that even as the culture evolves, there's always that point of reference. Yeah.
On how to kind of like preserve, let's say, cultural diversity, or at least, create awareness as to how I think capitalism, again, the construction of identity through consumerism. So the focus on the object rather than the focus on the process. I mean, the way I try to tackle it, for example, with my students is, I don't know if you all know the story of the last white northern rhino. I believe it's even in Kenya. I'm not sure. So it's basically, there's only one, male rhino left, and it's surrounded by, military or let's say, soldiers with guns to protect it. And then I wonder, what is the point in protecting that one animal if it's complete natural habitat, right? The reason why, if we deny, or if we overlook the reason why there's only one left, we're so focused on, look at how good it is that we're saving this last one, male species, but then we overlook how we got there, how we got to that point that there's only one left that literally needs military protection, right? So I think it's the opposite. Rather than focusing on the objects, how can we document the objects, right? Is how can we protect the process? Why is it that people don't want to weave anymore? Why is it that people don't want to, invest the time? Because that's, in the end, that's the whole thing. Yeah, but it's so time consuming. But it's in the time that you relate either to your community, weaving together, embroidering together, making together, that you actually transmit knowledge, true knowledge, not just the weaving, but how do we live as a community? What do we value, as a community? What do we think is important? So it's, I think, and I don't have the answer, but it's a shift from the object, to the aesthetics of the object, to the process of the object. Why did we start weaving anyway? Why did we start embroidering anyway? Besides, having clothes to wear, or, physical protection to wear on our bodies, I think we all know and agree that it's much more complex. If not, we would all be wearing the same thing. So I think it's a shift from the focus on the object to the process, as it's not just the weaving, it's coming together, it's transmitting stories, it's intergenerational, it's a way, it sounds corny, but a way of life, where so much more happens than just creating objects. The objects actually are inferior, I think, to the process. That the objects, how do you say that, play a role in keeping cultures dynamic. Cultures used to be based on oral traditions, and we tend to think that is inferior to written history, but it's the opposite, because the strength and the flexibility is in the oral transmission, because every generation gets to adapt it to new situations, to new circumstances. It's once you write it down or you put it in AI or you freeze it in time that it loses its strength in adapting to new situations, I think.
The value behind production of craft or fashion items, and the fact that the value is more in the process that goes into it and what is imbued into the product by what is happening with the society around us as we make the product. Because we're talking mainly about, or at least I think that we're talking mainly about fashion items, I would like to propose that these items were mainly produced by women, at least in our communities. And the question here is, or at least I understood the question as being, why is this not taken as being important, as opposed to looking at the commercial value of the item? I would like to pose a question here. In our societies, what women do, if I may say, I'm sorry, I will put it in a way that may trigger. A lot of what women do is seen as not being of value. For example, the time we spend as mothers, the time we spend building our homes, the time we spend cleaning, it's not valued and it's not paid work. I think that maybe the reason as women we have moved away from these crafts is that we have begun to value our time more, and we want to move into paid employment, which, as long as I am at my job from 8 to 5, I will not have time for crafts. I will not have time to sit with the women around me and produce craft as we build our community, because there is no, society does not value. I use the word I, but it's not specific to me. I'm just talking generally. Society does not value what I do. Yes, I do understand as a woman that there is and there was value in it. But if it is not something that I can turn to economic value in this changing world where my existence is no longer guaranteed because of changes of structure in society, such as divorce and such like, I will then not spend as much time, not that I will not spend time knitting or crafting, but I will not spend as much time as I did before. Also, the changing structure of society, where we now live in apartments, where we don't know our neighbors, all of that has contributed to this change. As I say, I'm not a sociologist, so I don't know. This is just me guessing what may contribute to this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Odundo. I just want to answer a question in